The flashlight beam hit the driver's face. Black man. Expensive car. Deserted road. Officer Ryan Mitchell felt a familiar surge of suspicion. The certainty that something was wrong here, that people like this didn't belong in cars like that unless they were dirty. Another drug dealer playing doctor, he muttered under his breath. The racism automatic, inherited, unquestioned. Tonight, everything would shatter, because when Dr. Marcus Hayes whispered those 3 words, "Please, help her," Ryan's hand was already on his gun. His mind already decided this black man was a threat. Then he saw the backseat, what he found that would destroy him, and force one impossible choice. Pull the trigger like his prejudice demanded, or save a life and face what he'd become. The engine of Ryan's patrol car hummed like a predator waiting in the shadows. Route 7 was always dead at this hour, just past midnight, when the usual suspects crawled back to their holes. He'd been parked here for 20 minutes, hoping for something, anything. When a Mercedes slid through the stop sign, Ryan smiled with ugly satisfaction. A black driver in a luxury car in the industrial district after midnight? "Got you," he said aloud. Stolen or drug money. What else could it be? Either way, the stop felt righteous. His racist certainty filled his chest like fuel. The chase was silent. No sirens yet. No urgency. Just Ryan watching that expensive car with its black driver, his mind cataloging every stereotype, every assumption his father had taught him, every locker room slur at the precinct. The Mercedes pulled over smoothly, which only confirmed Ryan's suspicions. They always act innocent. He'd told rookies 100 times. Makes you drop your guard. His hand moved to his holster before he even opened his door, racism guiding instinct. He approached ready for a confrontation, hungry for one. The window rolled down before he reached it, and there he was, black male, mid-40s, dressed too well for this neighborhood. Silk tie, expensive watch, definitely drug money. Ryan thought, prejudice turning observation into judgment. The man's eyes held fear, but Ryan interpreted it as guilt. These people always look nervous around cops because they're always hiding something, his training officer had said years ago, and Ryan had never questioned the racism baked into that line. License and registration. Ryan's voice was deliberately harsh, establishing dominance. He watched the driver's hands move toward the glove compartment and felt his pulse spike with anticipation. "Slow," Ryan barked. "Real slow." He wanted this man to know who had the power here. When their eyes met, Ryan felt a rush of superiority. This was his street, his city, and people like this driver needed to remember their place. The fear in those dark eyes satisfied something rotten in Ryan's chest. Back in the patrol car, Ryan ran the plates, almost disappointed when they came back clean. He ran the license. Spotless. Dr. Marcus Hayes, cardiothoracic surgeon, Cedar Heights Medical Center. Ryan's jaw clenched. Probably affirmative action, he muttered. That racist phrase his father used to explain away every successful black professional. The Willowbrook address made it worse. That was a white neighborhood. They move in and property values tanked. His neighbors always complained. Ryan stared at the screen, convinced a clean record was just luck, that this doctor was dirty somehow. They always were, weren't they? When Ryan returned to the Mercedes, his flashlight swept the interior like he was hunting proof of his own prejudice, desperate to confirm it. The duffel bag in the passenger seat made his heart race. "Gotcha," he whispered. "Drugs, cash, weapons. What else could these people carry?" "Sir," step out of the vehicle. "Now." The words came out dripping with contempt he didn't bother to hide. Marcus hesitated, and Ryan saw exactly what he expected. Guilt, concealment, criminality. "Officer, I can explain." But Ryan was already jerking the door open, already yanking Marcus out with the force he reserved for suspects he'd already convicted in his racist imagination. The surgeon stumbled, and something in his pocket rattled. Pills. Of course. Ryan's hand flew to his gun. "What are you carrying?" he demanded, his voice loaded with accusation. "What are you hiding?" Every word was prejudice weaponized. "Hands on the vehicle. Now!" Ryan shouted, louder than necessary, wanting Marcus to feel small, to feel afraid, to understand that the badge gave him the right to treat this black man like a criminal regardless of the truth. Marcus complied, his palms flat against the cold metal, and Ryan felt dark satisfaction watching this educated black man submit. This was the natural order. This was justice as Ryan's racism defined it. "There's a child in the backseat. Please don't scare her." The words barely registered. Ryan's mind immediately twisted them into something sinister. A child? Kidnapping. Trafficking. He'd heard about these people stealing kids, selling them. His flashlight beam swung to the rear window, and his training, his prejudice, his entire worldview screamed. Threat. His gun was out, his finger near the trigger, his mind already justifying what he might have to do. "Who else is in this vehicle?" Ryan shouted, his weapon trained on the blanket-covered shape, his racism conjuring images of hostages, victims, proof that he'd been right all along about this man, about all of them. "Officer, please, she's sick, she—" But Ryan was already yanking open the back door, his gun steady, his heart pounded with the certainty that he was a hero, that whatever he found would vindicate every racist assumption he'd ever made. The dome light revealed everything at once. A little girl, maybe 6 years old, black, like her father, dying, her skin gray, her lips blue, an oxygen mask covering her small face. She was real. She was innocent. She was the opposite of everything Ryan had convinced himself he'd find. Time stopped. The gun in his hand suddenly felt obscene. His mouth went dry. Every racist thought he'd had in the last 20 minutes crashed down on him like an avalanche of shame. Marcus had turned around, tears streaming down his face, his voice breaking. "That's my daughter, Amara. She has a rare heart condition. I was driving her to Children's Medical Center for emergency surgery when you, he couldn't finish." Ryan heard the words, but couldn't process them. Children's Medical Center, 18 miles away. Marcus had been lost, desperate, trying to save his child. And Ryan had stopped him, had brutalized him, because of Mercedes, because of skin color, because of racism. Ryan's entire world inverted. Every lesson his father had taught him, every precinct joke he'd laughed at, every traffic stop where he'd seen black skin and assumed the worst, all of it revealed itself as poison. His gun hung at his side, useless and shameful. He stared at Amara's failing body and saw not a black child, but a child. Just a child. Dying. Because of him. Marcus stepped forward, his hands raised, his voice steady despite his agony. "Officer, I know what you thought. I know what you saw when you looked at me. A black man in an expensive car. I've lived with that my whole life. But my daughter has maybe an hour. Maybe less. Dr. Patel is waiting in surgery. If I don't get her there, because you needed to prove I was a criminal," he stopped, unable to finish. The accusation hung in the air, undeniable and devastating. The next 5 seconds felt like drowning in his own racism. Ryan's mind raced through every excuse he'd ever used, every justification, every denial. But looking at Amara's dying face, at Marcus's anguished eyes, Ryan saw himself clearly for the first time. Not a good cop, not a protector, a man who had turned prejudice into policy, hate into procedure, and nearly murdered a child with his bigotry. "Get in the car." Ryan's voice cracked. Marcus stared, not understanding. "Get in the car, Dr. Hayes. I'm giving you an escort." Ryan ran to his cruiser, his hands shaking with the weight of what he'd almost done, what he'd been doing his entire career. He flipped on his lights and sirens, the night exploding in emergency red and blue. This was no longer a traffic stop. This was penance. This was Ryan racing against his own sins. They flew through the city at 90 miles per hour. Ryan cleared intersections, ran red lights, carved a path through the night. Behind him, Marcus kept pace. That Mercedes Ryan had seen as evidence of criminality, now racing to save a life Ryan had nearly ended. Ryan's radio crackled with dispatch asking for his status, but he couldn't respond. How could he explain? I stopped a black doctor because I'm racist, and now his daughter is dying. He could barely breathe through his shame. Children's Medical Center appeared like a sanctuary. Ryan screeched to a stop, and Marcus was already out, cradling Amara in his arms. Medical staff rushed out. They'd been waiting. Ryan watched them disappear through the automatic doors, and he sat there, alone with what he'd done. Not just tonight. Every night. Every stop. Every assumption. Every time he'd seen black skin and thought, criminal. He sat in his cruiser for 2 hours, unable to move, unable to think beyond the truth that had finally broken through his defenses. When his captain called demanding explanations, Ryan hung up. When dispatch radioed for his location, he turned off his radio. He watched the hospital entrance like a man waiting for his sentence, knowing he deserved worse than whatever came. At 4:17 a.m., Marcus emerged, exhausted, broken, alive. He saw Ryan's cruiser and stopped. For a long moment, neither man moved. Then Marcus walked over, and Ryan lowered his window, unable to meet his eyes, unable to face the man whose daughter he'd nearly killed with his prejudice. She's alive. Marcus's voice was hollow. Dr. Patel got her into surgery. He said if we'd arrived even 15 minutes later. He stopped, swallowing hard. She's alive, Officer Mitchell. Despite you. Despite your racism. Despite everything you assumed about me because of my skin. The words weren't angry. They were just true. Painfully, devastatingly true. Ryan had seen a black man and assumed the worst, and a child had nearly died because of it. Ryan wanted to apologize, but what could he possibly say? I'm sorry I've been racist my entire life, and your daughter almost paid the price. Some sins are too heavy for apologies. Some damage can't be undone by remorse. So Ryan said nothing. He just sat there, accepting the judgment in Marcus's eyes, knowing he deserved worse. Marcus reached into his pocket and pulled out his business card. He placed it on the edge of Ryan's window. Think about who you are, Officer Mitchell. Think about what you've become. Think about how many others like me you've stopped, brutalized, assumed we're criminals just because we're black, and decide if you deserve to keep that badge. Then he turned and walked back into the hospital, back to his daughter, back to a life that Ryan's racism had almost destroyed. Ryan sat there until sunrise, the business card untouched on his dashboard, Marcus's words echoing in his mind. When he finally drove back to the station, he went straight to his captain's office and requested a leave of absence. He couldn't explain it in words the department would understand. He just knew that he'd seen himself clearly for the first time, not as a good cop doing his job, but as a racist with a badge who had nearly killed a child. The weight of his uniform felt different now, not like honor, like evidence of every hateful thing he'd ever done.